When you think of the Middle East, what comes to mind? For most, it's either oil or endless turmoil. For nearly a century, the Middle East has been deeply mired in war and conflict. From Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Yemeni Civil War, this land seems to have never known peace. Countless lives have been lost, and trillions of dollars have gone down the drain, Yet the dawn of peace remains frustratingly out of reach. Why is the Middle East so volatile? The answer is incredibly complex, because the region functions like a massive chessboard where global powers are constantly locked in a strategic game against one another, But the root of all these problems can actually be traced back more than 100 years ago, It was during that time that the modern borders of the Middle East were arbitrarily drawn, and all the trouble started from that exact moment. For centuries, the entire Middle East was under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the empire's territory was incredibly vast, stretching all the way from Hungary to Yemen. Within this massive empire lived a diverse mosaic of people: Christians, Muslims, Persians, Kurds, and many others, all coexisting in the same lands. By the 19th century, however, the Ottoman Empire began to decline. Simultaneously, the British Empire was aggressively expanding its influence across Asia. For Britain, the Ottoman Empire was the single greatest obstacle to its expansion, because Ottoman territory directly blocked the crucial transit routes connecting Europe to Asia. To dismantle the empire from within, Britain began establishing colonial footholds throughout the Middle East. Britain signed an agreement with the UAE in 1820, followed by a treaty with Yemen in 1839. It brought Bahrain into its sphere of influence in 1861, and finally seized control of Egypt in 1888. By controlling Egypt, Britain also secured the strategic Suez Canal, creating a seamless route to Asia that completely bypassed Ottoman territory. The Ottoman Empire watched the expansion of British influence helplessly, fully aware of the existential threat it posed. Consequently, when World War I broke out in 1914, the Ottoman Empire chose to ally itself with Germany. This fateful decision gave Britain and France the perfect opportunity to dismantle the empire once and for all. To carve up the Middle East after the war, Britain and France secretly signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Under this pact, the Middle East was forcibly partitioned upon the conclusion of World War I. Portions of the region fell under direct British and French control, while other areas were designated for Russian control. Palestine and present-day Israel were placed under international administration. In drawing these artificial borders, the superpowers completely ignored local linguistic, religious, and ethnic differences. They cared only about their own interests, giving no thought to the catastrophic consequences such a division would inflict upon the region. This arbitrary drawing of lines remains the original sin behind a century of Middle Eastern instability. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, promised the Jewish community in Germany that it would support the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This pledge laid the groundwork for the enduring Israeli-Palestinian conflict. At the same time, global powers had come to realize that whoever controlled oil would hold the geopolitical upper hand in the 21st century. At the time, the United States was the world's largest oil producer and supplier, and Britain relied on the US for 80% of its oil. However, President Woodrow Wilson opposed the concept of colonial empires, leading Britain to view America as an unreliable ally. This fueled an urgent British desire to break its dependence on American oil. Although oil had been discovered in Iran as early as 1908, its reserves were limited. This triggered a frantic British search for more oil across the Middle East, a process that only deepened foreign control over the region. Following the end of World War I in 1919, the victorious nations signed a treaty at Versailles, France, adjusting the borders of the Middle East once again. The next year, the Treaty of Sèvres was announced, completely dismantling the Ottoman Empire and dividing its territories between Britain and France. The Turkish government refused to accept the treaty and resisted militarily for the next 2 years. It was not until the signing of the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 that the modern borders of the Middle East were finally locked into place. Yet, this treaty continued to disregard local realities. The Kurdish people, who were originally widely distributed across the region, were forcibly divided among 4 separate countries: Turkey, Syria, Iran and Iraq, reducing them to minorities overnight. Iraq itself was awkwardly cobbled together from 3 vastly different regions: Mosul, which was predominantly Kurdish; Baghdad, which was mostly Sunni Muslim; and Basra, which was overwhelmingly Shia Muslim. These 3 distinct groups were forced into a single nation. Meanwhile, Lebanon was detached from Syria to become an independent state under French control. At the time, Lebanon's population was 80% Christian and 20% Muslim. A demographic structure that would later undergo a radical shift, setting the stage for the Lebanese Civil War. Syria was formed by merging regions like Damascus, Aleppo, and Deir ez-Zor, creating a volatile mix of Sunnis, Shias, Alawites, and Christians within its territory. In the 1930s, Turkey pressured France to cede Syria's Alexandretta province to Turkey, because a large number of Turks lived there. Fearing that Turkey might ally with Germany again, France capitulated. In 1938, Alexandretta separated from Syria and officially merged into Turkey via a referendum in 1939. Furthermore, the primary water sources for Syria and Iraq, the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, both originate in Turkey. Turkey's construction of upstream dams directly impacted the water supply of Syria and Iraq, turning water into a major flashpoint among the 3 nations. By the late 1930s, the Middle East witnessed a massive boom in oil discoveries. Enormous oil reserves were found near Basra and Mosul in Iraq, areas populated primarily by Shias and Kurds. In 1938, oil was discovered along the eastern border of Saudi Arabia, a region heavily populated by Shias. That same year, Kuwait discovered oil reserves that eclipsed even those of Iraq. By 1956, oil was also found in northeastern Syria, right in the heart of the Kurdish homeland. Within just a few years, the discovered oil reserves in the Middle East accounted for 50% of the global total. Almost instantly, this land, already fractured by religion, ethnicity and politics, became a battleground for global superpowers. Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union began backing local proxies, and the geopolitical game officially upgraded. Against this backdrop, Britain took a step that would permanently alter the landscape of the Middle East, pushing for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine. In 1947, the United Nations passed a resolution to partition Palestine into 2 parts, allocating 62% of the land to the Jewish population and 38% to the Palestinians, while Jerusalem was placed under international administration due to its religious significance. Just a year after the resolution passed, Britain withdrew from Palestine. Israel promptly declared its independence, but not a single Arab nation recognized it. In 1948, several Arab nations launched a war against Israel, historically called the First Arab-Israeli War. Israel emerged victorious, securing its statehood and seizing control of 60% of the land originally designated for Palestine. The war forced approximately 700,000 Palestinians to flee their homes, many of whom poured into Lebanon. This massive influx fundamentally altered Lebanon's demographics, causing the Muslim population to surge from 20% into the majority. This shift planted the direct fuse for the devastating Lebanese Civil War that raged from 1975 to 1990. In the decades that followed, more Jewish immigrants arrived from around the world, shifting the demographics of Palestine further, intensifying the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and claiming tens of thousands of innocent lives. In 1954, Gamal Abdel Nasser became the president of Egypt, driven by the ideal of Pan-Arabism. His dream was to unite all Arab nations to collectively confront Israel and Western powers. Nasser not only opposed Israel and the United States, but also disliked pro-American Arab monarchies like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. In 1956, Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, prompting a joint invasion by Britain, France, and Israel. Although Egypt suffered militarily, Nasser emerged as a legendary hero of the Arab world. His brand of Arab nationalism spread rapidly across the region. In 1962, a civil war erupted in Yemen, pitting Arab nationalists backed by Nasser against traditional royalist forces. This marked the first major proxy war in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Jordan supported the royalists, while Nasser deployed Egyptian troops and weapons to back the nationalists. In 1967, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, occupying the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula. In retaliation, Egypt blocked the Suez Canal once again, a blockade that lasted for 8 years. When Nasser died of a heart attack in 1970, at the age of only 52, the dream of a unified Arab world completely shattered. In 1970, Britain announced that it would grant independence to its remaining protectorates in the Persian Gulf and the Middle East. By 1971, nations like the United Arab Emirates officially gained independence. Following the British withdrawal, the United States moved quickly to fill the power vacuum. As the world's ascendant superpower, America viewed securing Middle Eastern oil as an absolute necessity and began constructing massive military bases across the region. Today, Bahrain hosts the U.S. Fifth Fleet. Qatar houses a critical U.S. Air Force base. The UAE deploys American missile defense systems, and Saudi Arabia has become the largest buyer of American weaponry. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution erupted in Iran. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini overthrew the Pahlavi dynasty and established a strict Shia Islamic regime. Iran sought to export its revolutionary ideology to other Middle Eastern nations, causing deep panic among Sunni-led governments in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Bahrain, and Iraq. At the time, Iraq was ruled by Saddam Hussein, who feared that Iranian revolutionary thoughts would destabilize his own regime. In 1980, he launched an invasion of Iran, sparking the brutal 8-year Iran-Iraq War. The United States, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait provided billions of dollars in financial aid to support Saddam. The war finally ended with no clear victor in 1988. The Iraqi economy was on the verge of collapse due to the war. Saddam petitioned Kuwait to forgive $65 billion in war loans, but his request was flatly rejected. In 1990, Saddam ordered the invasion of Kuwait, seizing control of its entire oil reserves. With this move, he controlled 25% of the world's oil supply. Iraqi forces then massed along the Saudi border, signaling an intention to capture Saudi oil fields next. Had he succeeded, 50% of the global oil supply would have fallen into Saddam's hands. This was a scenario that the United States and Saudi Arabia absolutely could not tolerate. In 1990, the United States formed a coalition of 32 nations to launch a military strike against Iraq. After a year of intense warfare, Kuwait's independence was successfully restored. Through this conflict, the United States firmly cemented its position as the most influential external power in the Middle East. Today, the chaos in the Middle East seems dizzyingly complex. Yet if you trace the lines back to their origin, every single conflict leads back to those arbitrary borders drawn a century ago by superpowers who willfully ignored the region's diverse ethnic, religious, and linguistic realities. They looked out only for their own empires, leaving a deeply fractured Middle East behind for the local people. The subsequent discovery of oil, the ceaseless intervention of foreign superpowers, and the radicalization of religious and ethnic identities have merely poured fuel on the fire, ensuring that the turmoil in this historic land continues to rage to this day.